My younger sister-in-law falsely accused me of trying to be with her and destroyed my life. After the truth came out, I got my revenge. It's strange how quickly life can shift from something beautiful to something suffocating. If someone had told me a year ago that I'd be sitting alone, replaying conversations, wondering which word or glance twisted my fate, I wouldn't have believed them. Back then, everything was in place, steady, simple, and safe. I'd been with my girlfriend for 5 years, since high school. We started dating when I was 19 and she was 18. We weren't some dramatic on-again, off-again couple either. Ours was the kind of relationship people pointed to when they said, "It's still possible." Even our families seemed to fall into that rhythm. Dinners, holidays, road trips. Our lives had blended long before we noticed. We both went to the same university. She studied early childhood education, and I was 2 semesters away from finishing a degree in computer science. To help cover tuition and save for a ring, I had already picked the design. I worked part-time at a small tech startup. The pay wasn't amazing, but it was enough to keep me afloat and put something aside every month. I had almost $4,000 saved. I planned to propose on our anniversary next spring, but none of that mattered now. Her younger sister had always been around. She was a kid when I first met her, loud, always looking for attention, the type to eavesdrop on adult conversations just to insert a comment that didn't make sense. For years, I barely noticed her. She was just my girlfriend's sister. I didn't have a reason to pay attention, until I did. It started small, the kind of things you brush off because you don't want to sound paranoid. Once, she sat a little too close during movie night. Another time, she called me late, saying she accidentally dialed while studying. I didn't think much of it. She had just turned 18, and I figured she was testing boundaries in that annoying, self-centered way teenagers do. But then, during her graduation dinner, she wore this tight red dress and kept finding reasons to brush against me. When I mentioned it to my girlfriend that night, she laughed it off and said, "She's just trying to feel grown up. Ignore her." So I did, until ignoring became impossible. She started messaging me directly, texts that were never overtly inappropriate, but always suggestive. "You looked really good in that shirt today," or "wish you weren't taken." Once she sent a selfie and asked if she looked too grown for prom. I stopped responding. I even told my girlfriend again, this time firmer, but it turned into an argument. She accused me of overreacting and trying to police her sister, said I was being weirdly defensive. After that, I stopped going over to their place unless I absolutely had to. It created tension with her family, especially her mom, who thought I was pulling away, and I guess I was. I just couldn't explain the knot in my stomach every time her sister walked into a room. Things reached a tipping point during a weekend in early November. My girlfriend was out of town for a teaching conference, just Friday to Sunday. That Saturday morning, I got a call from her dad asking if I could help with the gutters. It wasn't unusual. He had some back issues, and I'd helped before. I agreed. When I arrived, the house was quiet. Her dad handed me the tools, thanked me, then left to pick up supplies. Her mom was at work, and she, her sister, was the only one inside. I kept my distance, stayed outside, and tried to finish quickly. But after an hour, I came in to grab water. She was sitting on the counter, barefoot, wearing this oversized shirt that didn't belong to her. It was my girlfriend's. She smiled like she'd been waiting for me. "You don't have to pretend, you know," she said, swinging her legs slowly. "Pretend what?" I asked, not hiding my discomfort. "That you're not curious." I froze, the bottle of water halfway to my mouth. "You need to stop." She slid off the counter and walked toward me. "It's not like I'd tell. I'm legal now." I stepped back. I said stop. Then, without hesitation, she leaned forward and tried to kiss me. I turned away, firmly pushing her shoulders back, not hard, but enough to create space. "What the hell is wrong with you?" She stared for a moment, and something in her face changed. Like she was humiliated? No, angry, furious. She stormed upstairs, slamming her bedroom door behind her. I stood in that kitchen, stunned. My heart was pounding, and not from attraction or nerves, from fear. I grabbed my keys and left without saying another word. I didn't tell her father when he called later asking why I left so suddenly. I didn't tell my girlfriend when she checked in that night. I didn't want to blow it up. I thought, stupidly, that silence would keep the peace. The next morning, everything fell apart. I woke up to 15 missed calls and a dozen texts, all from my girlfriend and her parents. The messages were frantic. accusatory. One just said, "How could you?" Another said, "You disgust me." Then came the calls from unknown numbers. My social media had exploded. Someone had posted a long, teary statement accusing me of preying on a vulnerable young woman and violating her trust while her parents weren't home. Photos followed, blurry pictures of her looking shaken, with what looked like bruises on her wrists. Screenshots of supposed messages I had sent her. Flirty, explicit, damning. Except I hadn't sent a single one. I called my girlfriend. She didn't answer. I texted. Blocked. Within 2 hours, the news had reached my boss. By noon, I was suspended from the startup. My phone buzzed every minute. Some were threats. Others were former friends demanding answers. A few just sent emojis, vomit, knives, flames. I had no words, just silence. And the echo of that slammed door. When you've spent years building trust with someone, the idea that they'd believe the worst version of you without hesitation is a kind of death. Not a loud one, but slow, suffocating, the kind that folds itself into every breath. That morning, I was still trying to make sense of what was happening when the police knocked on my door. 2 officers, neutral expressions, asked if I'd come with them to answer some questions. I asked if I needed a lawyer. They said I wasn't under arrest. Just routine. My mom stood behind me, gripping the edge of the kitchen counter. My dad asked if he could come. They said no. At the station, I sat in a gray-walled room with flickering lights for 6 hours. They read portions of the messages aloud, ones I'd never sent. The tone was mocking, cruel, like they thought I was pretending to be innocent just to save face. I kept repeating the same thing. I never touched her. I never sent those texts. They didn't believe me. They had proof, screenshots, photos, even a short voice memo where I supposedly whispered something disgusting. I told them to check the timestamps, check the metadata, but they said that wasn't their job. Their job was to collect my statement and pass it on. When they finally let me go, my voice was hoarse, my hands shaking. I went home, logged into my accounts. Everything was locked. Someone had reported my profiles for abuse, and the platforms had frozen my access. My savings account was flagged. Someone had claimed fraudulent activity, and the bank froze the funds pending investigation. The ring money was gone. Everything I'd worked for, wiped out overnight. Still, part of me thought maybe my girlfriend would come around. Maybe she'd call or text or just show up and ask me to explain. She didn't. Instead, 2 days later, she posted a statement herself, cryptic, but clear enough. To anyone who's asked why I haven't spoken publicly, I've chosen to believe my sister, and I stand by her. That post got over 600 likes and hundreds of comments calling her brave, strong, an example. People shared it, quoted it, turned it into a hashtag. My phone, still buzzing, felt radioactive. I deleted the apps, but people found other ways. Emails, anonymous numbers, even physical mail. One envelope had a printed photo of me from prom years ago. Someone had scribbled "predator" across my eyes in red marker. Only 3 people stood by me. My sister, who threatened to go to their house and make that girl repeat her lie to my face. My roommate, who locked down our apartment's social media presence and set up cameras at our door, just in case. And surprisingly, my ex's cousin, a quiet girl I barely knew who messaged from a throwaway account. "I don't believe her," she wrote. "She's done this before. Not this exact thing. But she likes chaos. Just be careful." That sentence haunted me more than anything. She likes chaos. Everything she did made more sense through that lens. Her texts, her performance, her silence before the storm. I began to remember things differently. Moments I dismissed. Glances I ignored. Questions she asked that now felt loaded. Like the time she asked me, "Do you think people would believe you no matter what?" I'd laughed then. What kind of question is that? Now I understood. After the incident in the kitchen, she hadn't reacted like someone rejected. She reacted like someone exposed, like her plan hadn't gone the way she wanted. And instead of backing down, she doubled down. The bruises in the photos didn't come from me. I hadn't even touched her wrists. But I did remember the towel rack was loose in the downstairs bathroom. If she'd yanked it hard enough, I couldn't sleep. Every creak in the house made me flinch. Every car passing outside felt like it might stop in front of our driveway. I didn't leave the house unless I had to. My parents were kind but unsure. I could see it in their eyes. They didn't say it, but they wondered. And who could blame them? The whole story was absurd, unthinkable. And yet, one night, I found myself scrolling through an old group photo. There we all were, me, my girlfriend, her sister, their parents, smiling at a lake, frozen in happiness. I zoomed in on her sister's face. She wasn't looking at the camera. She was looking at me. The expression wasn't friendly. It was possession. The messages she'd faked were oddly consistent with things I had said before. Phrases she must have remembered from parties. Car rides, text exchanges she'd read over her sister's shoulder. Enough to make the screenshots feel authentic, familiar, twisted echoes of real moments. And I began to feel sick. Because what kind of person plans that? What kind of person decides to destroy someone over rejection? I tried one last time to reach my girlfriend. I sent a voice message, not begging, just stating facts. You know me. You've known me for years. I didn't do this. I'd never do this. Please don't let this lie become permanent. No response. Later that night, my roommate found the message posted anonymously in a gossip forum with the caption, "Look how he tries to guilt her even now." The replies were brutal. Classic manipulator. Crocodile tears. Lock him up already. By the end of the week, I stopped checking. There was nothing left to say. I was still in my room when I heard my mom call my name, her voice tight, unfamiliar. When I opened the door, she was holding a folded paper, her hand shaking. "They served it," she said, eyes avoiding mine. "You've been formally charged." It was all there in black and white. Formal accusation of harassment and attempted assault. Filed, signed, real. The words blurred. My knees buckled, and I sat down hard on the bottom stair. I stared at the document like it was written in a language I couldn't translate. Even though I had prepared myself for this, at least mentally, it felt like a punch I hadn't braced for. That night I didn't sleep. Again. I sat on the edge of my bed trying to piece together what had happened, step by step. How one moment in a kitchen spiraled into this. The next morning, I met the lawyer my parents had found. He was direct, blunt. "You need to understand what you're facing," he said. "This isn't just about a misunderstanding. She's filed a sworn statement. There are digital messages, photos, an audio clip, and a medical note from her visit to urgent care. You're looking at a serious charge." I asked him how someone could fake all of that. He exhaled through his nose. "People can fake more than you'd believe. But convincing a judge or jury? That's the mountain we're climbing." My court date was set 3 weeks out. Until then, I was to comply with the temporary restrictions. No contact with her, her family, or anyone directly involved. I was also barred from campus, effective immediately. That same day, I received an official notice from the university. Pending the investigation, I was suspended. My student access was revoked. I packed my things from the dorm that night. My roommate helped. We barely spoke. Every time he tried, I just nodded or shrugged. What could I say? News spreads fast on campus. By the next morning, friends I'd known for years had ghosted me. Some unfollowed me publicly. Others posted vague messages. "Believe victims. Protect our girls." One guy I thought was close blocked me altogether. The silence of those who mattered felt louder than the noise of strangers. I tried not to Google myself, but of course I did. Posts, threads, entire comment chains dissecting my face, my behavior, my high school photos. People twisted memories into motives. A girl from freshman year claimed I always gave off weird vibes. Someone else said they remembered a time I lingered too long at a party. It was like I had become a character in a story none of them actually knew. Then came the call from the startup. They were letting me go, immediately. Given the nature of the allegations, they said, "We can't continue the relationship." I didn't even try to argue. I checked my bank account again, still frozen. That was the day I knew I'd lost everything I had worked for. I went home and sat at the kitchen table while my mom reheated leftovers we weren't going to eat. My dad read the mail in silence. No one mentioned the envelope sitting on the counter from a scholarship foundation. I already knew what it said. I spent hours staring at the ceiling that night. Sometimes I'd catch my reflection in the window and not recognize the person looking back. Pale, hollow-eyed, 24 and already gutted. 3 days later, things got worse. A photo was leaked online. Grainy, but clearly me, walking out of the house that day. In the background, she was visible through the screen door, arms folded, watching. The post claimed I was fleeing the scene. Comments exploded with fury. Why didn't he stay if he had nothing to hide? Classic abuser behavior. Disgusting. It didn't matter that I'd left to avoid a confrontation, that I hadn't touched her. The story had written itself, and I was the villain. Only a few people pushed back. My sister, posting carefully worded updates. My ex's cousin, who messaged again, saying, "I'm scared she'll hurt someone else if she gets away with this." Then something shifted. I was in the living room scrolling through old texts to ground myself in something real when I noticed a message from months ago. From her. A photo she sent from a beach trip. I'd barely glanced at it at the time. But the timestamp was strange. Earlier than when she claimed we'd started talking privately. I forwarded it to my lawyer. He replied within an hour. "Don't delete anything. I'm getting a forensic expert." It was the first moment I felt a flicker of something I hadn't in weeks. Control. Maybe small, maybe meaningless, but real. It's hard to explain how fast everything unravels once you're branded something you're not. You don't lose things one by one. They fall away all at once. Your reputation, your stability, your future. Like a trapdoor opening beneath you. I used to walk across campus feeling invisible in the best way. Just another guy in a hoodie with headphones and a backpack. Now, I couldn't walk 5 steps in public without feeling like people were staring, whispering, recognizing me from some post or thread. Except I wasn't on campus anymore. I wasn't anywhere, really. Just stuck. The university's decision came in the form of a brief email. I was permanently expelled. No hearing, no appeal. They cited protecting the community and maintaining campus safety. It didn't matter that nothing had been proven. The accusation was enough. My scholarships were revoked. That part stung worse than I expected. I'd worked for those. Hours of unpaid internships, essays, perfect GPA. Gone. The money I had saved for the ring never got unfrozen. Between legal fees and account restrictions, I couldn't even afford gas most weeks. My parents tried to help, but their support came with glances. Questions they didn't ask out loud. My dad suggested I take a break from everything and lay low until it passes. My mom hovered, watching me eat, sleep, breathe, like I was a glass about to crack. My friends vanished. No texts, no calls. Even the ones who had known me since high school, people I trusted, stayed quiet. I couldn't blame them, really. Who wants to publicly align themselves with someone accused of what I'd been accused of? The worst part was reading their silence. The way some of them still liked her posts. The way no one, absolutely no one, asked for my side. It got so bad that I started questioning my own memory. Did I look at her too long at that graduation dinner? Did I say something I didn't mean? Something she twisted into intent? Was there any version of the story where I made this happen? No, I knew the truth. I knew it with every cell in my body. And yet, the longer I stayed in that house, the more I felt like a shadow. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. I'd sit up until 4 in the morning, just refreshing pages, reading what people said about me. One night, I came across a post where someone speculated that I had paid people to defend me online. Another said I probably had a burner account to stalk her. I closed the laptop and stared at the wall until sunrise. My lawyer was doing what he could, but everything moved slowly. The forensic expert was working on analyzing the messages, trying to prove manipulation or fabrication, but that could take weeks. Meanwhile, the court of public opinion had already delivered its verdict. Then came the job loss. It wasn't official yet. But the HR rep from the startup finally called me directly. She kept her voice cold, polite. "Given the circumstances and to avoid further disruption to the team, we've decided to terminate your employment, effective immediately." I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. After I hung up, I sat in the driveway for nearly 2 hours, just watching the sky change color. I felt like I was in someone else's life. The only people still in contact were my sister, my roommate, and the cousin. They were the only ones who hadn't flinched. But even they didn't know how to fix it. One night when I couldn't take the silence, I messaged the cousin again. "Why are you helping me?" She replied almost instantly. "Because I've seen what she's capable of." That stuck with me. It meant more than I could say. But even that thread of hope was thin. I couldn't get a job. Every place I applied either Googled me or ran a basic check and never called back. The startup had been a lifeline, and now I couldn't even get hired to stock shelves at the Central Market downtown. Eventually, the legal bills started to pile up. My parents had already taken out a small loan to pay the retainer. Now there were follow-up fees. The forensic expert wasn't cheap, Every hour he spent cost more than I wanted to know. I thought about selling my car. Then I remembered I couldn't. It was in my dad's name. One afternoon, I overheard my mom on the phone with a family friend. She was crying. I couldn't hear everything, but I caught enough. We just don't know who he is anymore. I went back to my room and stared at the ceiling for hours. I didn't cry. I just felt gone. Later that week, I looked up ways to change your name and disappear, just to see what it would take. I wasn't planning anything. Not really. But the idea of starting over as someone else was the first thing that made sense in a long time. My sister noticed something was off. She didn't say it directly, but one night she dropped off food and sat with me for a while. "You don't have to prove anything to people who already decided you're guilty," she said. "You only need to survive this." I nodded, but survival felt like a stretch. At night, I started walking around the neighborhood. Hood up, no phone, just air. One night, I made it as far as the bridge outside town. I stood there a long time, watching headlights blur beneath me. My feet never moved forward, but the thought lingered. I kept walking. Some mornings I'd wake up and forget just for a second how much had changed. That brief moment between sleep and consciousness, where everything still felt normal, safe. Then the weight of it would return like a brick on my chest. There was a moment I remember clearly, a Tuesday early December, cold light creeping through the blinds. I opened my phone out of habit and saw an email from the county court confirming my next hearing date. No good news, no breakthroughs, just a reminder. This nightmare was real, and it wasn't close to over. I wasn't allowed to leave town without permission. I had to check in twice a week with the court's pretrial officer. Not jail, but not freedom either. I couldn't go near her, near campus, near anyone involved. Even accidental contact could lead to arrest. That meant not going to certain stores, restaurants, or parks. The town shrunk around me. The financial hit was relentless. My account stayed frozen under fraud investigation. Legal bills climbed. I applied for work everywhere, even places that didn't usually require background checks. Nothing. The best I got was a 2-day temp gig moving boxes for a shipping warehouse. Paid cash, barely enough to buy groceries. My dad started watching sports in silence. My mom cried when she thought I wasn't listening. I caught my little cousin asking my aunt if I was the bad guy on the internet. Everyone knew. Everyone had an opinion. My sister kept showing up. She brought food, helped organize court paperwork, even made me laugh a few times. She never treated me like I was fragile, just angry, and she let me be both. My ex's cousin messaged me again. She'd heard a rumor that the younger sister had posted something anonymously in a private group, bragging about ruining a predator's life, and that everyone believed her like sheep. We couldn't prove it was her. The post had been deleted, but it burned itself into my brain. She wasn't scared. She was proud. At night, I would lie in bed and rehearse conversations I'd never get to have. With her, with my ex, with the people who turned their backs. I imagined screaming, explaining, asking them how they could abandon someone they knew. The worst part was, I still missed my ex. Not her now, but her before. The girl who curled up against me during storms. The one who helped me study for my last exam. The one who believed in me. Or at least I thought she had. Sometimes I wondered if she had doubts now. If anything made her question the story. If she remembered that I'd always stayed late to help her dad fix things. That I held her sister's graduation camera when no one else wanted to. That I'd planned to ask her to marry me. But if she did remember, she stayed silent. I couldn't stay in the house forever. But I couldn't leave either. The stares at the grocery store were brutal. Kids whispered. Parents pulled their daughters away when I walked down the aisle. A cashier once dropped my change like it was contagious. I stopped going out unless absolutely necessary. The depression hit hard. I stopped answering texts, even the ones from people trying to help. I stopped showering regularly. I stopped eating unless someone made me. I didn't care about anything anymore. I started Googling long-term side effects of false accusations. PTSD, suicidal ideation, loss of identity. It read like a checklist. There was one night I walked back to that same bridge, stood there again, watching the water. My hands gripped the railing so tight my knuckles turned white. I didn't climb, but I thought about it. I really thought about it. What stopped me wasn't hope. It wasn't bravery. It was my sister's voice echoing in my head. You only need to survive this. That word, survive. Not win, not clear your name. Just survive. So I went home. The next day, I made a decision. I wrote out a letter. Not to my ex, not to the sister, not even to the public. Just to myself. A list of everything I still had. My sister, my roommate, that cousin, my breath, my mind, my story. I started documenting everything, every memory, every inconsistency, every hole in their timeline. I printed the photos she used and pinned them on my wall next to my own evidence. I listed the names of people who had defended me, the people who had ghosted me. I didn't know why I was doing it exactly. Maybe just to feel like I existed again. Like I had a version of reality to hold on to. My lawyer called a few days later. The forensic expert had begun digging through the messages. There were inconsistencies in the metadata, timestamp anomalies, formatting mismatches. He wasn't ready to make a declaration yet, but he said, "There's something here. It doesn't line up." It wasn't justice, but it was a crack. That same night, I opened my laptop and started a document. I titled it with just the date. I began writing, not as a victim, not as someone trying to convince the world, but just as me. I didn't know what the end would be, but I wasn't done fighting. The email came late at night. I was lying in bed, laptop dimmed, just scrolling through the same pages I'd read 100 times, legal forums, wrongful accusation blogs, message boards that mostly devolved into arguments. I almost didn't check my inbox, but there it was. Subject: Update from Digital Forensics. Preliminary inconsistencies found. I sat up so fast I knocked over a cup of water. The email was short. Too short for what it meant. The analyst my lawyer had hired had discovered modification irregularities in some of the screenshots submitted as evidence. Message timestamps didn't match the time zone data embedded in the image files. The fonts used in the alleged texts weren't consistent with the messaging app's UI at the time they were supposedly sent. In other words, they were fake, or at the very least, altered. I stared at the screen for nearly a full minute before I could move. It was the first time in months that I felt something unfamiliar in my chest. Movement. Not joy. Not even relief. Just motion. A shift. My lawyer called the next morning, voice cautious but upbeat. "This doesn't prove innocence yet," he said, "but it gives us a reason to question the prosecution's primary digital evidence." That's big. He mentioned filing a formal motion to introduce a forensic report. "It may delay the trial," he added, "but delays might work in our favor. More time to build our side." We needed it, because even though the evidence was starting to crack, the damage had already been done. The legal system doesn't care how your story looks on social media. And the public doesn't care what the courts say if the narrative is already cemented. A few days later, the cousin messaged again. She asked if I'd heard the rumors. Apparently, the younger sister was trying to tighten her story, telling different versions of the event to different people. Her explanation about how the alleged assault unfolded had changed twice in the past week. First, it happened in the hallway. Then it was upstairs. She even told someone at her college that it happened in the car. That night, I printed out my own timeline. Every detail I could verify. Where I was, who I spoke to, when I arrived, when I left. I even started mapping the layout of the house, room by room. It felt obsessive, but it kept me from drowning. My sister offered to help. We sat at the dining table for hours with pens, markers, highlighters. "She's slipping," she said. "People who lie always do. They talk too much." I didn't say anything, but I hoped she was right. The court hearings were still weeks away, but I could feel the shift. The panic that had clung to me every second of every day began to loosen. Not disappear, but loosen. My lawyer said he had also reached out to a video forensic specialist to evaluate the voice memo she submitted. "We're not guaranteeing anything," he warned, "but if there are edits, we'll find them." Another surprise came a week later. A woman showed up at my parents' house, someone I didn't recognize at first. It was an old friend of the cousin. She'd been in the same high school as the younger sister. She asked to speak privately. She told me carefully that the sister had done something similar once before. Not with the police, but with another guy, one of her tutors. She accused him of flirting, spread it around school, ruined his reputation. Then, months later, she laughed about it at a party. Said she liked the way power felt, the woman said, eyes heavy. I asked if she'd be willing to write a statement. She nodded. It wasn't a silver bullet, but it was something. Meanwhile, the silence from my ex remained deafening. I knew we weren't going to talk. Not really. But some part of me still checked my inbox every night. I never stopped wondering if she believed any of it deep down, or if her loyalty to her sister blinded her to everything else. But I couldn't waste energy there anymore. I had to survive the courtroom. Another small break came when the video expert analyzed the audio clip. There were inconsistencies, too smooth, too edited. Parts of the waveforms didn't match natural speech cadence. There were gaps, artificial compression patterns, signs it had been stitched together. Not conclusive yet, but enough for doubt. Doubt was all we needed. Reasonable doubt. My lawyer began prepping for the hearings differently now. If we push this, we can dismantle her version piece by piece. We just need to keep building. The support from my sister and the cousin became more regular. They checked in almost daily. Some nights we'd sit in the garage with folding chairs, just breathing cold air and listening to nothing. Nobody said anything profound. It wasn't like a movie, but it helped. The depression hadn't vanished. The fear hadn't disappeared. I still had nights where I'd lie awake, unable to close my eyes, still had moments where the panic would hit me out of nowhere, at the sink, brushing my teeth, halfway through tying my shoes. But now I had something I didn't before. Momentum. Tiny. Shaky. Fragile. But it was mine, and I wasn't going to waste it. It started with a voicemail. A short message from someone I hadn't heard from in months. Her father. His voice was tense, like he was forcing the words out. I'd like to talk, not on behalf of anyone. Just me. I didn't answer right away. I let it sit for a full day. I replayed it 12 times. Then I sent it to my lawyer. Do not meet him alone, he said. But this could mean something. I agreed to meet at a neutral place, a public library near downtown. He arrived 10 minutes early. I watched from across the parking lot. He looked smaller than I remembered, tired. We sat at a table in the back, out of earshot. He didn't waste time. I don't know what happened that day, he began, hands folded. I wasn't there, but I've been listening, watching, and some things don't add up. He didn't apologize, didn't even say he believed me, but he did something better. He talked like someone who finally stopped lying to himself. She's changed her story 3 times, he said quietly. Said it happened upstairs, then said it happened in the garage. But I installed a camera out there last summer. Motion activated. I forgot about it until last week. My heart stopped. He leaned in. The feed's stored to a private drive. I checked. It still works. I didn't breathe for a full 5 seconds. And, I asked, voice barely above a whisper, you left the house before she claimed anything happened. You walked out alone. She followed, and she didn't have a mark on her. My chest tightened. I'm not here to fix what she broke, he said, but I can't stay silent anymore. That same day, he contacted my lawyer and turned over the footage. The camera showed me leaving the house exactly at 12:37 p.m., alone, no hesitation. She followed less than a minute later, clearly agitated, arguing with someone off-screen. She wasn't crying, wasn't shaking. No bruises, no panic, just anger. When my lawyer reviewed the footage, he said nothing at first. Then, this is your spine. This holds everything together. The legal team filed a motion to introduce the footage into evidence. The prosecution tried to block it, claimed it was incomplete context and possibly manipulated. But the forensic expert confirmed the file's authenticity. Chain of custody was intact. Timestamps matched. Meanwhile, word started to spread quietly. Her cousin passed along whispers, friends beginning to doubt. A few even unfollowed the sister on social media. Someone posted a vague message. Not everything is as it seems. She replied in the comments. Anyone who sides with abusers can unfollow me too. But the tone had shifted. No more applause, no flood of likes, just silence. Then came her second mistake. In a supplemental statement filed with the court, she claimed I'd sent her another message, recent, threatening. The problem? It was sent from an account that had been deactivated for over 2 months. My lawyer cross-referenced login records. I hadn't accessed that platform since the suspension. The forensic analyst found more. The screenshot of the message had inconsistent pixelation, layered text. It was digitally forged. We submitted a rebuttal. The prosecution, blindsided, began to falter. They requested more time, but the judge was firm. The trial date remained. And then came the final crack. That same woman, the cousin's old friend, agreed to give a sworn statement about the tutor incident. Her affidavit detailed how the sister had fabricated a similar accusation in high school. No police were involved that time, but the school investigated quietly. The tutor was reassigned. Nothing formal ever came of it, but the pattern was undeniable. My defense team assembled everything: the inconsistencies in her testimony, the forged messages, the untouched footage, the prior behavior. It was a fragile structure, but it was real, tangible, a picture of truth drawn in small, steady strokes. Still, I wasn't celebrating. I sat alone in my room the night before the trial and watched the video on repeat, not because I needed to see it, but because I needed to remember who I was when I walked out that door. I had done nothing wrong, but proving it to the world had become my burden. The next morning, I put on the only suit I still had, the one I wore to my cousin's wedding last year. It didn't fit the same. I didn't either. The courthouse was packed. Local media had shown up. There were whispers, flashes, people pointing. I kept my eyes down and walked straight ahead. Inside, I sat at the defense table, hands folded, trying not to shake. The prosecutor cleared her throat, stood, and said the words I'd been waiting to hear for months. "Your Honor, the state is prepared to proceed." The courtroom felt colder than I expected. Not just from the air conditioning, something deeper. A quiet hostility in the walls, in the way people glanced sideways, in the nervous clicks of pens and shifting chairs. Day 1 of the trial. I sat at the defense table, trying not to grip the edge too tightly. My lawyer whispered instructions. Stay neutral. Don't react. Let the facts do the work. The prosecution began with an opening statement that felt rehearsed, emotional, calculated. They spoke about trust, power, betrayal. They painted a version of me that made my skin crawl. The room leaned in. The jury watched me carefully, not with anger, but curiosity, like they were trying to decode what kind of person I was. Then they called her. She walked in wearing soft colors, hair pulled back, a trembling hand clutching a tissue. It was all performance, but a convincing one. She sniffled before answering the first question. Her voice cracked in all the right places. When asked to describe the incident, she looked down, as if reliving a trauma. She repeated her story, this version placing the event in the hallway, claiming I'd cornered her when no one else was home. She cried. The courtroom was silent. She described my aggressive tone, said she felt trapped, that I had touched her wrist, roughly, that she had bruises. She said she was afraid to speak out because I was so close to her family, that she had screenshots of flirty messages, that I'd threatened her after the fact. Then she looked at the jury and said, "I just want to feel safe again." I could feel their eyes on me. She stepped down slowly. Her lawyer helped her off the stand. There was a buzz in the air, the kind of hush that comes after a funeral. My lawyer leaned toward me. "It's her high note. Let her have it. Now we dismantle it." The second day, we began to push back. First, the forensic analyst. Calm, methodical. He walked through how the screenshots had been altered, showed the timestamp inconsistencies, explained how metadata didn't match the alleged dates. "These images do not originate from the device or account they claim to," he said clearly. Then came the audio expert. He pointed out the editing artifacts in the voice memo. There are clear digital seams, cuts and splices consistent with fabrication. Still, the prosecution pushed. They claimed it didn't matter how the evidence was formatted, that victims don't always remember details perfectly, that trauma can scramble facts. Then we called her cousin. She was nervous but steady. She described the younger sister's history of attention-seeking, her tendency to twist stories. "She likes to feel like she's the center of everything," she said. "She once bragged about making a teacher cry." The jury listened, but it was the fourth day that changed everything. The brother of her old friend flew in from out of state. He'd never met me before, had no reason to lie. He told the jury about how, in high school, she accused him of stalking her after he rejected her at a party, how his school investigated, how it nearly cost him his scholarship, and how she laughed about it 6 months later. "She said people will believe anything if you look like you've been hurt," he said flatly. Her lawyer objected, claimed it was hearsay. The judge allowed the testimony, citing character relevance due to a pattern of behavior. And then we showed the footage. My lawyer paused before hitting play. "This is the timestamp security video from the family's garage, collected independently by the father of the accuser." It showed me leaving. No hesitation, no struggle. Just walking out the door, keys in hand. Then her, a full minute later. Calm. Unmarked. No signs of fear. Just annoyed. Irritated, she kicked the doorframe on her way out. When the video ended, the courtroom was completely still. For the first time, I looked at the jury. Their expressions had shifted. Not pity, something else. Calculation, doubt. The prosecution tried to regroup, called a psychologist to testify about trauma response, saying victims don't always present consistently. But it was too late. The inconsistencies were too large, the evidence too clear. Outside, the media started to change its tone. A local journalist wrote a neutral piece titled, "Accusers' Claims Face Digital Doubt." It was the first headline in months that didn't call me a monster. The next morning, her father didn't sit with her family. Instead, he sat in the back row, alone. My lawyer whispered, "They know it's slipping." Still, I didn't relax. Not yet. The judge had been clear. Both sides would finish presenting before any verdict. And trials don't end cleanly. They end with weight, with uncertainty, with 12 strangers behind a door trying to decide your life. That night, I didn't sleep. I watched the video again, and again. Not because I needed proof, but because I needed to remember how close I came to disappearing. Court resumed on a Thursday. The energy in the room had changed. The jurors no longer looked at me like a question. They looked at her. Her lawyer tried to stall, raised concerns about the chain of custody, the video's resolution, even claimed the footage was inconclusive without context. But the judge had already reviewed the file, verified its metadata, reviewed the father's sworn affidavit. It was admissible. The defense requested to play the footage for the court again, this time with expert commentary. The lights dimmed slightly as the screen flickered to life. The room fell silent. The first frame showed the interior garage, clear timestamp in the corner, 12:37 p.m. I walked out the door, alone. My shoulders were stiff, but my steps were steady. I didn't hesitate. I didn't look back. I didn't say a word. The door closed behind me. Seconds passed. At 12:38 p.m., the door reopened. She stepped out, not crying, not shaking, not even distressed. She glanced around quickly, then slammed the door behind her, muttered something indistinct, and stormed toward the driveway. No bruises, no limping, no fear, just attitude. My lawyer let the footage run twice. Then the expert took the stand and explained how the video matched exactly with my cell phone's GPS exit ping, down to the minute. No tampering, no edits, synchronized with cell tower data. The courtroom was so quiet, I could hear someone shifting their coat in the back row. Then came the turning point. The prosecution scrambled to recover. They asked to call the accuser back to clarify her perception of the timeline. But when she took the stand again, she cracked. She started confident, repeating that she felt scared, that time was a blur, that maybe I'd gone out to smoke and come back in. But according to your original statement, you said he never left, my lawyer said, voice calm, that he cornered you. In the hallway, between the living room and the stairs. She hesitated. I remember things differently now. You also said the incident happened around 12:45 p.m. Yes, around then. Yet we have a confirmed timestamp of the defendant exiting the property at 12:37 p.m. And this footage shows you leaving alone, visibly unharmed. She looked down. My lawyer continued. You followed him out. You were the one yelling. Do you remember what you were yelling? Silence. The jury watched her, frozen. The judge leaned in slightly. Miss, you are under oath. You must answer. She swallowed hard. I don't remember exactly. Did the defendant ever come back inside? No, she whispered. Did he touch you at any point? No. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Her lawyer stood quickly. Objection! Badgering the witness? Sustained, the judge said. But the damage was done. The jury had heard it, plain, unedited, from her own mouth. Her story collapsed in real time. Outside the courthouse, the local news vans had picked up on the case again. By lunch, headlines were already circling online. New video footage contradicts accuser in campus assault trial. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I just sat there, numb, letting the moment sink in. But then the prosecution made their final move. They requested to dismiss charges quietly. No jury verdict, no trial continuation. In light of new evidence, they said, the state moves to drop all charges without prejudice. My lawyer stood. We oppose that motion. We ask for a formal verdict from the jury. The judge considered, then ruled. The jury would deliberate. It didn't take long. After just under 3 hours, they returned. The foreman, a middle-aged woman with glasses and a calm face, stood and read the verdict. On the charge of assault, not guilty. On the charge of harassment, not guilty. On all counts, not guilty. I exhaled for the first time in months. My sister gripped my arm. My lawyer placed a steady hand on my shoulder. I turned and saw her father sitting in the back row, eyes closed. Alone. The accuser had already left. There was no dramatic exit, no screams, no collapsing sobs, just quiet. But inside me, something had shifted. I wasn't just cleared. I was free. But freedom didn't feel like victory. It felt like ruins. The kind you walk through, barefoot, after the storm has already torn everything apart. The courtroom emptied slowly. Reporters lingered near the doors, whispering into phones, taking down notes that wouldn't come close to capturing what had happened inside those walls. My lawyer packed his notes without saying much. He didn't have to. We both knew what had been won and what hadn't. Outside, the sky was overcast. Fitting. We didn't go out for dinner. There was no celebration, just a quiet ride home in my sister's car. She kept one hand on the wheel and the other resting near mine. She didn't say, "Congratulations." She said, "You're safe now." And that meant more. But safe didn't mean whole. The prosecutor held a press conference 2 days later, carefully worded, full of legalese. Given new evidence, the state has chosen not to pursue further prosecution. No apology. No admission of error. Just closure sanitized for public consumption. Her name wasn't mentioned once. What did make the news, though, was the charge filed against her. Filing a false police report, tampering with evidence, both misdemeanors. She pleaded no contest. The sentence? 1 year of probation, 50 hours of community service, and a $1,200 restitution payment. No jail time, no public apology, no requirement to speak about what she'd done. Just a quiet agreement and a sealed hearing. The money didn't cover even a fraction of my legal fees. But I didn't contest it. I didn't want to see her face again. I didn't want her words, her excuses, her tears. I was done. Her parents stopped speaking, to each other, to the public. It leaked weeks later that they'd filed for divorce. Her father had moved out. Her mother had left the school board where she worked. No statement was ever issued. My ex reached out once. It was a short email. I saw the footage. "I'm sorry." That was it. I stared at it for hours. I thought about replying, about unloading the 9 months of hell I'd been through, about telling her that love doesn't disappear. It gets buried under disbelief and silence. But I didn't reply. She made her choice. I made mine. Some old friends messaged too, not many, a handful, the ones who had vanished when it all hit. "I always had a feeling," one wrote. "I didn't know who to believe," said another. They spoke like nothing had happened, like we could rewind. We couldn't. I didn't block them. I just left them on read. The ones who mattered had stayed. My roommate, my sister, the cousin. They were there when I was broke, hated, forgotten. Those are the people who count. My accounts were slowly unfrozen. I saw the balance for the first time in months, barely 3 digits left. My car needed repairs. My laptop was cracked. I'd sold half my clothes trying to stretch groceries. The startup job wasn't coming back. Neither was school, at least not yet. I'd have to reapply from scratch. And people still whispered. Even after the verdict, I caught looks, saw posts that tried to reinterpret the trial. "Not guilty doesn't mean innocent," someone wrote. But it didn't matter anymore. The people who chose to hate me weren't interested in truth. They were interested in stories. And my name had made for a good one, until it didn't. I went back to the courthouse one last time, not for any official reason, just to sit, to breathe in the silence of that hallway where everything had begun. I found a quiet bench near the vending machines, closed my eyes, listened to the footsteps, the distant hum of fluorescent lights, and let the air move through me. 9 months. That's how long it took to destroy me. And now, piece by piece, I'd have to build something from the ruins. Not a comeback, not revenge, just a life, one that didn't revolve around pain. But I knew that wouldn't happen here. Not in this town. Not where every sidewalk held a memory, a betrayal, a face I didn't want to see again. So I started making plans. Nothing big, just research. Other cities, other schools, remote jobs, a way out. Because now I had what I didn't before, freedom, and I wasn't going to waste it trying to get back what I lost. That part of my life was gone. I was going to build something new. Moving wasn't as symbolic as people think. It didn't come with a sunrise or a breakthrough. It came with a worn-out backpack, a half-broken laptop, and a one-way bus ticket to a city where no one knew my name. I didn't even tell most people I was leaving. My sister knew. My roommate helped pack. The cousin sent me a playlist for the ride, songs to build something new. But beyond that, I slipped out quietly. No goodbye posts, no dramatic final photo. Just gone. The city I chose wasn't special, just affordable. A mid-sized place with a decent community college and a late-night warehouse job that paid $12 an hour under the table. I rented a room in a shared house near the train tracks. The walls were thin. The heater rattled. My window faced a brick wall. It didn't matter. It was mine. Every night after work, I came home with sore legs, hands red from cold and cardboard dust. I'd shower, eat cheap pasta, and spend an hour reading course material online. I wasn't enrolled yet. I couldn't afford it, but I wanted to be ready. When the time came, I'd go back better prepared. My new life was small, uneventful, but quiet. No one here knew what happened. I didn't have to dodge glances or whisper apologies I didn't owe. When people asked where I was from, I lied. Not to hide, just to protect the fragile distance I'd built between me and the person I used to be. Debt followed me, of course. My parents couldn't help anymore. I stopped checking the balance of what I owed in legal fees and student loans. The numbers felt abstract, too big to fight, too constant to fear. I made minimum payments when I could. Let the rest drift in the background. There were no friends here, at least not yet. Just coworkers who smoked outside during breaks, asking where I got my boots or what I thought of the night manager. I kept my answers short. Not rude, just careful. Trust had become a slow thing. Some nights I still woke up shaking. Flashbacks to the interrogation room, the look on her face in court, the emptiness in my girlfriend's eyes. I'd sit up, sweating, heart racing, and remind myself, it's over. You're safe. You're here now. I wrote a lot, not for anyone, just for myself. Pages and pages of what I remembered, what I felt, what I feared. I wasn't writing to forgive. I wasn't writing to heal. I just needed to get it out of my head so I could breathe again. One night, I wrote the sentence, I am not what they said I was, and I stared at it for a long time. That simple, that hard. Somewhere between week 6 and 7, I got an acceptance letter from the local university. Conditional admission. I'd have to attend part-time. Pay up front. No scholarships. No safety nets. I said yes anyway. I took out another small loan, this one co-signed by my sister. I promised her I'd never miss a payment. She just said, don't worry about the money. Just keep moving. Classes were hard. My brain felt slower, rusted, like a machine that hadn't been used in too long. But I forced myself to focus. Late-night lectures on algorithms, video walkthroughs, discussion boards where no one knew what I'd survived. I wasn't at the top of the class, but I wasn't drowning. For the first time in a long time, I was just living. And some days that was enough. I still kept in touch with the cousin. She never asked for updates, just sent things, articles about people who'd been falsely accused and survived, memes, songs, reminders that she was still in my corner. I didn't tell her everything. Not about the nightmares, not about the bridge I'd stood on, but I thanked her every time. Because without her, without my sister, without a handful of people who never left, I wouldn't have made it here. I never filed a civil suit against my accuser. Part of me wanted to. But the other part, the part that just wanted peace, won. Instead, I kept my head down, built structure from wreckage. I learned to find comfort in repetition. Same breakfast, same bus stop, same textbooks. I learned to stop looking over my shoulder, learned that the world doesn't forget, but it does move on, eventually. And I learned that sometimes surviving means starting over one tiny step at a time. No clean slates, just quieter scars. 3 years. That's how long it took to get from the ashes of that courtroom to where I am now. Not in leaps, not in redemption arcs, just slow, uneven progress. Some days forward, some days lost, but enough to build something resembling a life again. I live in a quiet apartment on the second floor of a weathered building, about 15 minutes from where I work. It's nothing fancy, old pipes, thin walls, but it's mine. A little messy, comfortable, real. I work in software now, entry level. The kind of job where I write lines of code all day, fix bugs someone else left behind, and occasionally sit in on team calls. It's not glamorous, but it's steady, and it keeps the lights on. I earned my degree last spring. It took longer than it should have. 2 schools, 3 changes of major, and enough late nights to forget what sleep is. But I got it. No cap and gown moment, just a confirmation email and later a diploma in a cardboard tube. I hung it on the wall beside my desk. Not because it proves anything to the world, but because I earned it. And I didn't quit. The debt still lingers. I make payments every month, chipping away. Rent, groceries, student loans, utilities, it all stretches tight. But it stretches. I know how to live lean. That part never left me. The dog came about a year ago. I wasn't looking for one. I'd stopped by a shelter just to kill time. But there she was, small, scruffy, older than most of the others. No one had claimed her in weeks. Her name on the card was Milo, but it didn't fit. I renamed her June. She doesn't bark much, just follows me around the apartment, sleeps at the foot of the bed, and perks up every time I reach for my keys. She saved me from the echo of an empty home. I didn't realize how quiet my life had gotten until there was something else breathing beside me. My sister still calls twice a week. We talk about everything and nothing. She's married now, happier than I've ever seen her. Some nights she sends photos, her and her husband on hikes, their backyard garden, the dog they adopted to keep up with me. The cousin sends messages less often now, but always at the right time. Birthdays, bad anniversaries, random Fridays when the world feels off. She says she's back in school herself, studying counseling, wants to work with trauma survivors. I don't know if I had anything to do with that. I hope I did. I don't hear from the rest. No one from that family, no former friends who disappeared when things turned, not even my ex. She never reached out again after that email. And that's fine. I don't need closure from people who abandoned me. I don't need to reopen wounds just to see if they've healed. Some scars stay. There are days I still wake up clenched. Days when my chest tightens over nothing. Crowds still make me nervous. Accidental eye contact with strangers still spikes my heart rate. I avoid courtrooms. I avoid stories about false accusations. I avoid mirrors when I'm too tired because I still expect to see someone who doesn't deserve peace. But I'm here. I walk June every morning. Black coffee, same route. I nod at the neighbors. I check emails. I clock in. I live. That word means more to me now than it ever did before. I'm not the same person who sat in that interrogation room 3 years ago. I'm not the boy who thought love could protect him. I'm not the man who begged strangers to believe him while the world turned away. I don't need anyone to believe me anymore. I know who I am. That's enough. This life I've built. It's not perfect. It's small, unfinished. But it's mine, and no one else gets to write it for me again. I still think about what happened, sometimes more than I want to, but it doesn't define me anymore. It shaped me, changed me, nearly broke me, but I'm still here. And every time I step outside, leash in hand, June pulling toward the corner, the cold air in my lungs reminds me of one quiet, stubborn truth. They tried to destroy me, but I lived. And before we wrap up, it's important to remember, this story is fictional and was created for entertainment purposes only. But in real life, situations of harassment are very serious and should never be ignored. If you or someone close to you goes through this, report it to the proper authorities and don't stay silent. Your voice matters and can make all the difference.